Oh dear lord, it's MatPat. If you're going to talk about an adaptation, then you should probably know what the hell you're talking about. Your video trying to say that Neville was another candidate for the prophecy was dumb enough, but now you're going to be able to be debunked with a single point. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to rip apart a lot of this theory, and unlike him, I'm actually going to cite myself. Everything I bring up will have links down below. Welcome to Film Theory, where MatPat screws up theories about long-standing franchises and provides his normal fluff that I can skip.
Till I stand before my lord for judgment.
Right. Anyway, this theory hinges on an ancient form of magic, number magic, otherwise known as math. Man, can you think about how much more excited everyone would be to have their 5th period class be number magic instead of math? Math, real talk, you got yourself a branding problem. And heck, no wonder Harry and Co didn't figure this one out themselves, since number magic isn't even a subject that they're taught.
First off, it's not called number magic, it's called arithmetic, and it just so happens to be one of Hermione's favorite subjects at Hogwarts. Yes, at Hogwarts. It's not seen much in the books due to it being an elective that Harry did not take, and the movies cut nearly all of the classes out together. You haven't even gotten to starting your theory out, and you're already screwing things up.
Till I stand before my lord for judgment.
We got this scene where we see Tom Riddle, otherwise known as Pre-Voldemort, learning about splitting his soul using dark magic.
It's called, as I understand it, a Horcrux.
It's the first time that we hear Tom Riddle specifically mention Horcruxes, which we know he later uses to divide up his soul into neat little slices of soul pie and shove them into pretty much anything he can get his hands on, from books to cups to snakes. Snakes, not Snapes. Though, real talk, how awesome would it be to have Snapes on a plane? Get these
Of course.
Snapes off my mother
Of course.
plane. Samuel L. Jackson must have failed potions. Oh, and by the way, this joke in fond memory of Alan Rickman. You are certainly missed, sir. Now, enough sadness, back to the theory. As Slughorn mentions in the scene, Horcrux talk is no laughing matter.
This is very dark stuff, very dark indeed.
Tom says probably what we're all thinking.
I didn't fully understand it.
Oh hell no! Tom Riddle says that line before Slughorn says it's dark magic. You're playing the lines in reverse, misleading your audience. Adding into this, the point of the scene is that he's trying to get clarification on what would happen if he created multiple Horcruxes. The book, The Secrets of the Darkest Arts, the book he found out about Horcruxes from, didn't have anything on it and was taken from the library by Dumbledore after he read it. He wasn't serious about not knowing what a Horcrux was. He knew what they were and how they were made. He was lying to a teacher to try and get information out of them.
Like the cheeky little scamp that he is. But in all seriousness, how does this work? Because if you really stop to think about it, there are some pretty severe implications to this whole Horcrux business that goes unexplored in the books and movies. So before we go there, let me remind you of the mechanics of splitting your soul. This one is for all of us who aren't hardcore enough to have yawned their way through the Deathly Hallows Part 1 15 times. And let's be honest here for a second, we can all agree, right, that Ron being gifted and brought back by a Deluminator is a pretty darn goofy moment, right? Am I the only one who thinks that still? Because seriously, the thing just takes light away from things. It doesn't also have a magical teleportation device in it. That's just random. You must be JK.
This is one of the things that's actually covered in both the movie and the book. It didn't teleport him, you fool. He took some light before he left, and the Deluminator will also return the light. So all he had to do was follow the light.
Anyway, a Horcrux is an object that contains or hides part of someone's soul, thus allowing them to survive should someone kill their original body. It's like a bank, but instead of money, you store souls. Just like a real bank! Have you seen those interest rates lately? Seriously, less than 1%? What are you doing, economy? Anyway, in the scene we saw before, Slughorn dishes up some really handy exposition by telling us that to create a Horcrux, we have to commit a murder, then somehow use the life energy transferred during that murder to split your own soul in half and sort of rip part of it out of your body and cram it into the nearest object of your choice.
And here's the biggest problem with your entire dumb theory. To quote the Harry Potter wiki, to create a Horcrux, the wizard first had to deliberately commit murder. This act, said to be one of supreme evil, would result in the murderer metaphorically damaging their own soul. A wizard who wished to create a Horcrux would then use this damage to their advantage by casting a spell which would rip the damaged portion of their soul off of the whole and encasing it in an object. Your entire argument is hinged off the idea that the soul is ripped evenly in half. That's not how it works. It's a small chunk of the soul that is ripped off. Let's also go into your bank analogy. The graphics and the way you word your argument is that it is to store a part of the soul and pull it out when you need it. But this is a classic lich phylactery. It's simply an anchor that pins your soul and mind to the world of the living. The difference between a phylactery and a horcrux is that a phylactery holds the entire soul, while a horcrux is holding parts. Even though they have different methods, they do the same thing. The point is that Voldemort's running around with the majority of the soul and doesn't have any plans to recollect his horcruxes.
Till I stand before my lord for judgment.
Based on the info from the books and the movies, the actual mechanics of soul cutting and soul transferring are a bit hazy, but it's not like we're writing an eHow page on the subject. We get the general point that when you create a Horcrux, you're splitting your soul in half between your body and an object, and that tells us everything we need for today's theory. So Tom Riddle and Slughorn talk about splitting the soul into 7 pieces, but we all assumed that it's 7 equal pieces. It is most definitely not. Every time Voldemort splits his soul in half, he only leaves half of his remaining soul in his own body. Then the next time he creates a Horcrux, it splits in half again, over and over. So what does that mean?
As you can see, this is where the majority of his theory is sticking together, and what I brought up has already broken his theory into more shards than he thinks Voldemort's soul is in. I could probably stop here, but I feel like pointing out even more of the problems later on in this video.
Well, let's walk through some history that must not be named to see how it all plays out. He starts in 1943 with one whole soul. This conversation with Slughorn happens after the school year starts in 1943 when Tom is 16 years old. In the Chamber of Secrets, we learn that Tom Riddle puts his 16-year-old soul into his diary, thus creating the first Horcrux. To create this Horcrux, he kills Moaning Myrtle, which we also confirm when she describes her killer as a boy speaking a strange language.
But they said something funny, a kind of made-up language.
Wow, if you'd let the scene play all the way through, you would know that she was killed by the Basilisk. Riddle didn't actually kill her, though it does bring into question how Riddle made a Horcrux out of her if he wasn't the killer.
Till I stand before my lord for judgment.
Next, he kills Hepzibah. I don't know how to say your name, Hepzibah, but I'm gonna say it that way because it's fun to say. Next, he kills Hepzibah Smith in 1945, followed by a random muggle. Like I said, JK breaking her own rule. Anyway, these two characters aren't really in the movies, but were confirmed in a web interview with JK Rowling in 2007. Tom bumps them both off and splits his soul into the Hufflepuff cup that we see in Goblet of Fire.
The Hufflepuff cup is not the Goblet of Fire, you fool. They have different names, for God's sake. The cup is in Gringotts and isn't seen until the Deathly Hallows. How on earth you managed to get that wrong, but when they were made correct is beyond me.
Till I stand before my lord for judgment.
Anyway, the next Horcrux is in 1956, the Ravenclaw Diadem. We know Voldemort shows back up at Hogwarts at this point to ask Dumbledore to become the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, which Dumbledore turns him down for. After that, Voldemort, get this, curses the position and everyone who holds it from then on. Hence the reason why every year there's a new teacher in the position. I honestly didn't know this until reading up on all the lore bits on the Pottermore site.
This is, like your theory on Neville being another candidate for the prophecy, addressed in the books. If memory is correct, Dumbledore explains this in the 6th book. The point is that this is an already known fact. That is, unless you are the minority of the people who had seen the movies and not read the books. The surveys that are on screen is from the Dom series Lost in Adaptation, where he took surveys before reviewing the movies, and as you can see, most of the people who had seen the movies had read the books.
Till I stand before my lord for judgment.
And since he was in the neighborhood anyway, he hid the Diadem Horcrux in the Room of Requirement, which, despite what he says about it in the book, was ridiculously easy to find. Here's a bright idea. Let me hide this item in a room that, if someone is required to kill me, will make sure it shows up right in time for that person. What an excellent hiding spot.
That is, of course, ignoring the fact that before Harry had held a class in the Room of Requirements, Voldemort had been the only person other than the House Elves who had been in there for probably decades. Not even the Marauders, who had managed to make a map of every single secret passage in the castle, knew of the room.
Till I stand before my lord for judgment.
What's important here is that by age 30, Voldemort's soul is down to 3.125% of his original soul. And despite talking about this grand plan to split his soul into 7 pieces, he must absolutely suck at counting because he actually quits at 6. 5 items and his original soul. Way to do a job only 857 hundredths of the way, Voldy. Because yeah, at that point, Voldemort takes a little siesta for about 30 years. I don't know, maybe he's afraid of more appendages falling off.
Or he spent the next 30 years being a general in a civil war he started. Just a thought.
So there's no other Horcrux creation until 1981. That's the moment when Voldemort attacks Harry Potter. That's not even intentional Horcrux creation. I don't think this guy was ever gonna get to 7. By the way, just as a side note, anyone else realize that Voldemort is 54 when he attacks Harry? I always just assumed that he was in like his 30s. And that is still decades before the book. He is literally 70 when we see him returning to power. That is crazy.
You know, it's almost like he grew up in the ending tale of England's Great Depression, which was ended around the end of the Second World War, and that didn't actually end until after he created his second Horcrux. Going to be skipping to the last point that I have, but he basically spends until the end trying to claim that Harry has more Voldemort's soul in him than Voldemort does, but as I point out, the creation of a Horcrux doesn't split a claim in half, so that debunks that.
Till I stand before my lord for judgment.
With so little soul left, it's no wonder that Voldy can't effectively use the Elder Wand at the end of the series. Yeah, I know that the actual explanation given in the movies is about disarming the Elder Wand from other wizards, but that is a whole nother episode unto itself, my friend.
Can't wait for that one so I can break it like this one. Anyways, what I wanted to bring up was that the Elder Wand's resistance wasn't the only thing causing problems. In the last chapter of the 7th book, Harry explains that he cast the same spell that his mother did that protected him over the entire school. It made it so Voldemort had problems sending any deadly spells towards anyone in the school. Now with that out of the way, here are my final thoughts. MatPat, if you're going to be doing theories about adaptations, you need to do more research into the books that the movies are based on. And then the fact that you're pulling the whole thing about the soul being split evenly in half straight out of your ass. Honestly, this is about what I expected to see when I clicked on your video. With the several facts you got wrong, missed, or ignored, it's truly a messed up theory.